Behind the tinted visors and the smell of high-octane fuel, a historic storm was brewing in the MotoGP paddock. It was early 2026 and all eyes were on one man, Toprak Razgatlıoğlu. After years of conquering world superbikes and cementing his legacy as a three-time champion, the Turkish phenomenon had finally arrived on the grandest stage of them all. But this wasn't the fairy-tale debut many had envisioned. Joining the Prima Pramac Yamaha squad meant inheriting a heavy burden. For the first time in decades, Yamaha had abandoned its soul, the iconic inline-4 engine, in favor of a brand-new, unproven V4 configuration. The pressure was suffocating. At 29, critics whispered that Toprak was too old for a MotoGP rookie, claiming his aggressive World SBK-bred riding style would never translate to the delicate precision required for a Grand Prix prototype. In early preseason tests at Sepang, those whispers turned into a roar. The new Yamaha V4 was a wild, unrefined beast. It was fast on the straights, yes, but it fought its rider at every corner. Toprak, the man famous for his stoppy entries and surgical braking, looked like a passenger. He was struggling to break into the top 15, and the frustration inside the garage was palpable. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next, and it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire 2026 season. But behind that calm expression, pressure was building fast. To understand the crisis, you have to understand the physics. MotoGP bikes are built on a knife's edge, and Toprak's signature style, braking so late that the rear wheel lifts off the asphalt, requires a front-end feeling that the new Yamaha V4 simply wasn't providing. The data was brutal. While the bike had the top speed to rival Ducati, it was losing seconds on corner entry. The electronics were too rigid, and the engine braking was so aggressive that it caused the rear tire to skip and chatter, destroying Toprak's confidence. Inside the garage, whispers began spreading among the engineers. Some believed Toprak was trying to ride the MotoGP bike like a superbike, a mistake that has claimed many careers in the past. But Toprak wasn't just fighting the clock, he was fighting a machine that felt alien. Every time he tried to push, the front end would tuck or the rear would slide uncontrollably. The Stoppy King was being forced to ride with his hands tied. The tension between the Japanese engineer's data-driven approach and Toprak's instinct-based feedback reached a breaking point. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras, under the hot sun of southern Spain. Inside the garage at the Circuito de Jerez, whispers began spreading. This wasn't a public spectacle, it was a private closed-door test, a no-ego zone where Yamaha's future would be decided. While the rest of the grid was preparing for the next round, Toprak and his crew chief, Alberto Girabuola, were locked in intense technical debates. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of rubber and the weight of expectation. Toprak made a move that shocked the traditionalists. He stopped looking at the telemetry from his teammates and demanded the team listen to his hands and his gut. "I don't care what the computer says," he reportedly told the engineers. "I need to feel the bike speak to me." This was a clash of philosophies. The Japanese engineering culture thrives on sensors and hard data, but Toprak was asking for human adjustments. He wasn't asking for more horsepower or a more complex aero wing. He was asking for something far more subtle. He wanted a bike that wouldn't fight him when he closed the throttle. But what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras. In a move that some mechanics claimed felt like a gamble, Yamaha decided to flip the script. Instead of forcing the rider to adapt to the $3 million prototype, they began adapting the bike to the rider. The changes seemed deceptively simple: slight tweaks to the engine braking mapping, a minor shift in the front-rear weight distribution, and a fine-tuning of the throttle response. In the world of MotoGP, where aero wars and ride height devices dominate the headlines, these were invisible changes. Toprak requested that the engine braking be made smoother, less biting during deceleration. He wanted the transition from full throttle to heavy braking to feel natural, not mechanical. It was a request for softness in a world of hardness. Yamaha's lead engineers were skeptical. If you soften the engine braking, you risk losing stability. But with the 2026 season hanging in the balance, they gave in. The bike was wheeled out of the pit lane with a setup that defied standard factory logic. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. As Toprak exited the pits at Jerez, the sound of the V4 engine was the same, but the movement of the bike was transformed. Within just 3 laps, the stopwatch told a story that left even the most veteran engineers stunned. Toprak wasn't just faster, he was scary, consistent. The telemetry turned green across every sector. The bike that had previously been wild on corner entry was suddenly stable, allowing Toprak to rely on his signature late braking. He began deep diving into Turn 6, the famous dry sack corner, with the rear tire dancing in a controlled slide, a sight the paddock hadn't seen from a Yamaha in years. He was no longer fighting the machine, he was dancing with it. Internal reports suggest his lap times dropped by nearly half a second, a lifetime in MotoGP. But it wasn't just the speed, it was the psychological shift. The tension in the garage evaporated, replaced by a chilling silence as the team realized they had finally unlocked the Turkish predator. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. What happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. The Jerez test became a mini-reset for Yamaha's entire development direction. The data gathered from those few days became the blueprint for the rest of the 2026 season. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu had done the impossible. He had tamed the V4 beast by trusting his instincts over the sensors. He wasn't just a rider anymore, he had become the lead architect of Yamaha's revival. As the news of the Jerez times leaked through the paddock, the mood in rival garages turned cold. The narrative that Toprak was too old or unsuited for MotoGP was dead. He had sent a staggering message to the likes of Bagnaia and Acosta. The Stoppy King had found his feet and he was coming for the crown. In the high-stakes world of MotoGP, the difference between failure and glory is often determined by the smallest details. And in Toprak's hands, a few millimeters of adjustment had turned a struggling rookie into a championship threat. The wild Yamaha was gone. In its place was a weapon, and the hunt was officially on.